Hello everyone and welcome to another Rewind review. In this video we are taking a look at a video game adaptation that I have never seen before, and that is Silent Hill. Released in 2006 and based on the Konami video game series of the same name, Silent Hill sees Dr. Rose Da Silva taking her adopted daughter Sharon to the town of Silent Hill in an attempt to cure her ailment. But after a violent car crash, Sharon disappears and Rose begins a horrific journey to get her back. Directed by Christophe Gans and written by Roger Avary, this instalment stars Radha Mitchell, Laurie Holden, Sean Bean, Deborah Cara Unger, Kim Coates, Alice Cridge, Tanya Allen and Jodelle Furland. Yes, you heard me right, this is a movie that I have never seen before. And slight confession, I've never played the games either. But in more recent years, I have become a little bit more intrigued by this franchise. In fact, only a couple weeks ago, I actually bought Silent Hill 2 on PS5. Looking forward to playing that as soon as I can. If you have been following this channel for a little while now, you probably have noticed a little change in me regarding horror movies. Well, horror content in general. And I've become a little bit more brave for exploring more horror films, TV shows and games. I'm a big boy! Why did I just say that? Anyway, case in point, I've been blitzing through the Resident Evil games over the past 2 years and I've got the new one on pre-order. And it's the Deluxe Edition too! But as for the Silent Hill franchise, I've never played or seen any of it before outside of the odd gameplay clips. And I only really have a limited knowledge of it. I was aware of Silent Hill being a town, I knew it was a psychological horror story, plus I have seen the monsters that appear before, like Pyramid Head and the nurses, who for some reason always pop up at Comic-Cons. But as for stories, characters, just generally what the hell's going on, things like that, I didn't know anything, so I was curious to dive into this world and find out. And since Return to Silent Hill is now out in cinemas, that did give me a bit of a nudge. So here we are. Now, I am fully aware that all three of these movies do not have the best critical consensus. And I've got a feeling that the game fans are going to say that these movies are not the best representation of this world, or the best introduction. But regardless, I do want to check these movies out anyway. And to be honest, after seeing this movie, I am a little bit more excited to actually start jumping into the games. So without further delay, let's take a look at Silent Hill. In this first installment, Rose and Christopher Da Silva, the adopted parents of Sharon, become increasingly desperate to cure their daughter of her ailment. And in her desperation, Rose takes Sharon to the abandoned town of Silent Hill. But after a violent car crash, Rose wakes up to find that Sharon has vanished and begins to search the creepy fog-engulfed town for her. And in her search through this twisted reality, Rose finds herself pursued by grotesquely deformed creatures and a townspeople who appear to be permanently stuck in purgatory. And the longer she stays, Rose slowly begins to discover the truth behind the apocalyptic disaster that burned the city down 30 years ago and left it a foggy, ash-laden nightmare. Truth be told, I didn't really know what to expect from this. I had an idea based on what I knew about the games, but as for the actual story, I thought it was going to be something else. I thought this was going to be a straight-up ghost story. And to be fair, it kind of is. It has ghostly things in it, but that's not really what it's about. This is a very dark and disturbing film that deals with religion, cults, repression and guilt, and it's all woven into this slow-building mystery that unravels over the course of the film. How it explores those themes isn't too subtle, but then again, there are elements that I did find a bit confusing. It is quite straightforward for the most part, but there is quite a lot of stuff that happens in this. And some of that stuff, there's no real explanation for, but based on what information they give you in the film, you do have an idea or two. There's most likely people watching this video saying that there's not meant to be an explanation or it's explained in the games or the sequels, but I don't think that's a good way of adapting something if you have to rely on something else to explain it. There's a lot of exposition in this as well, so maybe they could have had a little bit more time to explain some of the more supernatural elements like what the creatures are. You get an idea for some of them, but some of the other things, what are they? But anyway, that said, the way this story is told, it plays out well, and I think the pacing is just right for a 2-hour horror film. To be honest, I do feel like this movie could have been a little bit longer, but it is fine as is. I can also see some people saying that this movie is quite slow. I get where that comes from, but for me, the runtime, everything, that did work for me. I thought it was just right. And because of the slow pace mixed in with the mysterious location, it does make this feel a little bit more creepier and foreboding. Especially how many sequences there are where it's just quiet. You're constantly on edge because you're expecting something to jump out. But that's not what kind of movie this is. This is actually a psychological horror movie that's very atmospheric and doesn't rely on jump scares. It does have a few, don't get me wrong, and some of them do work, but this movie is far more interested in atmosphere and creepy imagery. And I can't lie, I was actually surprised just how far this movie goes. I was prepared to see some unsettling things in this like the creatures, but I wasn't prepared for just how disturbing and gory this actually does get. There is some proper, unsettling, almost Hellraiser-like visuals in this, especially whenever some of the creatures are on screen. I got asked by a friend what I thought about this movie, and the first thing that came to mind was, it felt like a cross between Hellraiser and Paranorman. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to mind, but it does feel kind of accurate. Anyway, this movie is rated a 15 over here, so I was expecting it to be a bit tamer than it actually was. There's multiple moments in this that did make me genuinely question, Are you sure this is a 15? The finale is pretty grisly and gory on its own, but there's a scene involving Pyramid Head that genuinely, when it happened, made me go, whoa. So, caution is advised. Anyway, I will say there is a little bit of CG and green screen that is utilised in this, and it's not always the best, but I can't lie, some of the effects that are used in this movie hold up surprisingly quite well. Like, really well. The green screen is where it's a bit mixed, and the bit with the bugs, but when that armless thing pops up, that looked really good. There is a chance that it could be partially practical, but I don't know. But if it is, that definitely explains why it looks so good. But like, how they bring the town to life with the fog that just hangs around the characters and the ash descending from the sky, that looks amazing. And yes, this does do quite a lot for real as well, and that's partially why it holds up as well as it does. The sets they made, the locations they use, it genuinely looks really good and very well detailed. And I genuinely appreciate what they're able to do with the production design for this movie overall, because it looks fantastic. And this does extend to the creature and character designs as well. From what I've seen, the creatures as well as the characters that are from the games are translated visually and stylistically very accurately. A good amount of the creatures are brought to life with makeup and prosthetics. And I think that makes them a lot scarier, especially since, like when it comes to the nurses, they're played by professional dancers. So they move in this very eerie, uncanny way. I can't lie, that was the most intense sequence in this film for me, where Rose has to turn a lamp off and she has to weave in and out of all these nurses without alerting them. It's very short but very effective, and it's been copied quite a few times now that I think about it, but it also felt like a level from a game, and I'll come back to this in a minute. Anyway, they may be quite simple, but I do like the costumes that the characters have as well. They aren't all wearing like blacks and whites or greys and muted colours like you would expect from this kind of film, but they do look good and never out of place. Even some of the slightly stranger styles. Obviously there's nothing garish and everything they do wear is quite simple, but I do think that the costumes overall do look nice. And that brings me on to something else that I really liked about this movie, the look and the cinematography. It isn't dark, it isn't desaturated, it actually looks nice. The cinematography looks amazing with some pretty gorgeous looking visuals. And I don't mind that sort of yellow filter that they use throughout this. It's only during the more sort of nightmarish sequences. A lot of horror movies around the time started using like sort of weird colour filters for their films, and some of them work, some of them don't. I feel like this one does work for when it is used. And at the same time, the sound design is fantastic and very immersive and atmospheric. Say what you want about the story, the handling of the themes and the characters, I cannot fault the look and sound of this film. There's a little bit of noticeable ADR, but it's not enough to be distracting. Based on how the sound design is in this movie, I would put money on most of the dialogue in this being ADR. And unless you know what to look out for, you'd probably never even notice. The technical aspects, while sometimes a tad dated like the CG and green screen, is still impressive, and I really like it overall. Now, coming back to what I said a little bit earlier about the nurses section feeling like a level from a video game, this movie as a whole does have a bit of a video game feel to it, or at least to me it does. Again, I haven't played Silent Hill, but I have played ones like it, and there is something about this movie that does echo that. From the way that characters appear, how certain situations strip the characters of weapons, the voices of some of them. Full transparency, the police officer Sybil, when we first meet her at the start of the movie, it might be just me, but she does have a slight aura of an NPC. She does feel like one of those characters that does get introduced into a game to help you out. Maybe it was her costume and how she holds herself, I don't know. She is actually a character from the games, I believe. There is even a sequence towards the end of the film that does feel like a cutscene, but it's not out of place. It's a little strange, I won't deny, but it doesn't feel out of place. I've only just found this out since doing research for this movie, but apparently the director, Christophe Gans, he was a huge fan of the video games, and it took him the best part of about 5 years to acquire the rights to the film. He even apparently sent a video of himself with scenes that he'd cut together and made himself using his own money to Konami as a way of proving how much the games meant to him. So, whatever you think of these movies, you can't deny how passionate he was about this. There might be a bit of pushback on that last statement based on what I know about the new one. I do need to reiterate though, I haven't played the game, so I don't know how closely translated these movies are. By all accounts, since I started doing research for this video, it doesn't sound like this movie is based on any particular game. It's sort of like a mix and match of different elements from all the different games, mixed in with a lot of original stuff as well, which I do find a little bit strange after how this got made. But it does feature the music from the games. The soundtrack for this movie is a mixture of themes from the game by Akira Yamaoka and an original soundtrack from Jeff Dana, and I really like it overall. The piano theme especially. It's got a really spooky edge to it that really does highlight and underscore the mysterious setting. The music adds an extra layer of uneasiness to what's going on screen, and in some instances, it actually does sound quite nice and beautiful. Obviously, there is a little bit of a 2000s flair to it, and it sounds a little bit strange, but it's not out of place. And it's not like overbearing drum and bass either. That would have been a weird choice. It sounds excellent, and apart from a few moments, I do think that it is used well. I haven't talked about the characters yet, have I? Let's fix that now. In terms of the characters that appear in this, there's actually quite a few more in this than I was expecting there to be. And they're okay. For a psychological horror film, I don't think that they're the most complex characters. They are quite singularly focused and motivated, but they all do their part and have a role to play. And as for the performances from the actors, they're actually not bad. The biggest standout for me is Radha Mitchell as Rose. Radha is a very underrated actress, and I think she's brilliant here, with a very believable performance. I can't deny that as a character, Rose does make some pretty stupid decisions. But then again, I suppose that is to show how desperate she is to find a daughter, and that is something that does build up and escalate over the course of the film. She is easily one of the strongest elements of this movie, and I think that what Radha does with this character, I do like, and I do think that she is really good. Even with some of the clunkier dialogue, I do think that she does kind of make it work. Sean Bean I thought was really good too, as Rose's husband, Christopher. I will admit, in the long run, I don't feel like what Christopher does is a necessary addition to this story. It only really serves as exposition, which is mostly delivered by Officer Thomas, played very well by Kim Coates, and offers an outside perspective on what's happening within Silent Hill, because you get to see what it is that's actually happening. It kind of cheapens the mystery a little bit, and it doesn't really go anywhere. He gets arrested at one point and told to go home, and that's pretty much the last we see of him until the end. I know that his section of the movie does fill in the gap of what he's doing while all the stuff in Silent Hill's going on. He even goes to the orphanage where they adopted Sharon to find out where she comes from. But I can't help but feeling that it does feel a bit pointless overall. I think there could have been either a little bit more done there, have him show up towards the end of the film, actually have him factor into the finale in some way. Unless this is what happens in the sequel, I don't know, but as it is in this movie, I think they could have done a bit more. Sean is good, but the character story just didn't quite work for me. I did admittedly find one scene with him a little funny. It doesn't have any comedy, this movie, before you ask. It's right at the beginning of the movie when Sharon's disappeared and Rose goes after her. Rose ends up going under a bridge, and Christopher decides to go across it. And this bridge has traffic going both ways, and it's going quite fast as well. It's a good stunt, I won't deny, but he's played by Sean Bean, and I couldn't help that entire sequence going, "Dear God, that's Sean Bean, don't be crossing a busy road." This is actually a rare survival film for him, which was a nice change. For any of you that have no idea what it is that I'm going on about, anytime Sean Bean is in a movie, there's like a 50-50 chance that he's going to get killed off. Anyway, speaking of the daughter, Sharon, she's played by Jodelle Ferland, who also plays the hauntingly ghost-like Alessa Gillespie, and she's okay. I'm a bit split on her performance as Sharon. She has got some okay moments, and I don't think her performance is bad overall. But I do think that maybe she could have done with another take or two at a few moments. At least in my opinion. But at the same time, I think she is much better as Alessa. In fact, she is really good and creepy as Alessa. She's okay overall, but I do think her performance is a bit mixed. And this is also partially true of Laurie Holden as the police officer, Sybil Bennett. At least at first. When we first meet her, she is basically just a straight-laced police officer just doing her job. But as the situation escalates, both her character and Laurie's performance get better, and she does get some pretty cool scenes. I honestly thought that she was going to end up getting used as cannon fodder for the monsters, but it honestly surprised me how much of a role she actually does have in this. There isn't a huge amount of room to properly explore her character. This is very much Rose's story, but I do think that she was good overall. As for the rest of the cast, I think that everyone does pull their weight and do what's required of them, even if they don't have huge roles in the overall film, like Alice Cridge as Christabella. There's also a few other characters who do have a little bit of a ghostly kind of presence to them. They kind of feel like those characters who just kind of like pop up in a video game and just tell you things. Even some of the ways that they talk to Rose kind of has that feel to it. But I do think that even those performances are pretty good too. I don't think there's any other big standout performances in this, but I do think that everyone is okay overall, and everyone does do their jobs well. Overall, while I can't say that this is a brilliant film, I did think that it was pretty good. In fact, I thought it was much better than it's often made out to be. The story may be a bit simple with some confusing elements, the characters can be a little flat sometimes with some clunky dialogue, but they are aided by some decent performances. I loved the creepy atmosphere, the mysterious aesthetic, the immersive sound design, the effects, even if they are a tad dated. The music is really good, the production design as a whole is fantastic, and I can't lie, it is a film that I did enjoy. I don't see this being a movie for everyone. It is a bit slow, not everything makes sense, and it can be shockingly graphic at times. And I think if you are a fan of the games, from what I'm aware, you might be a bit split on a few decisions. But as for me, I thought it was pretty good. I'm glad I finally decided to give this a look, and it has made me more intrigued about delving into this franchise. So with all that being said, my rating for Silent Hill is a 6 out of 10. Well, that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, so if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification button, and let me know down below what you think of the film, which movie in the series is your favourite, and which game as well. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future Rewind reviews you would like to see me do in the future, let me know down below. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. See you guys.